Well, thank you all for coming. I mean, it's great to have such a great representation from around the world, and that's really what's impacted us this last. Can't even say year anymore. It's closer to a year and a half that we've all really been impacted by COVID-19, the pandemic, and social distancing measures have closed our schools, have reopened our schools. Once it reopened, sometimes we didn't have all of our students there. And we just went through all these different phases that it's really been, I can't even say a marathon. It's like been a marathon / obstacle course this last year. So we understand that many of you are on your breaks, summer break, but we also know that this is also a time when people start thinking about what they want to do next time, or when school starts up in the fall for most of us. So we'll be talking about some strategies that might help you with that. Before we get going, I just wanted to say that my name is Jared Borup. I'm in the Division of Learning Technologies in Schools. You see the bit.ly there. I'll go ahead and put that in the link. If you're interested in our program, we have a graduate certificate. We also have a master's degree, a 30 credit master's degree, 15 credit graduate certificate that focuses entirely on blended and online teaching. So Chrissy is one of our star alum from the program. And I think the photo on the right was our first presentation together, and now it's been, I forget how many.
A couple.
Yeah, but Chrissy is fantastic and always happy to help. So I love working with her. So in the next slide, we're going to be talking about assessments, and we know that learning objectives really is the engine of our courses. But right next to learning objectives are the assessments and how we actually measure students' ability to reach or master the learning objectives. And then our activities kind of are aligned with that. In the next slide, sometimes we hear backwards design, where when we're designing our learning activities over the summer or whenever, we need to start with the learning objectives. But right after that are the assessments, and then the learning activities after that. The wrong approach is actually to start with your learning activities and then go to assessments and just hope that they meet the objectives. That's not the best approach. The other thing that we sometimes hear in education is assessment of learning, but we also want assessment for learning, where students are learning during the assessment. So we're seeing more and more of that with project-based learning, where we see that the activities and the assessments are almost one and the same. So in this presentation, we just hope that you take one thing. Chrissy's going to share a lot of different things in this presentation. Obviously, you cannot apply everything Chrissy shares, but we hope that you take that one thing away from today's presentation that you can actually use and apply, although there'll be dozens of things that you could use and apply. But hopefully you take that one thing, start small, apply that, and really see how it works with your students.
Well, thank you. So we're going to be going over, like you said, just different assessment strategies that you can use throughout the school year. So my name is Chrissy McLaughlin. I'm currently a 6th grade teacher in Fairfax County, Virginia. I teach advanced academics. I graduated, like Jared said, with my master's. The name of the program had changed, but it was blended online learning back in 2018. And it was a blessing because when the pandemic hit, I already had a couple of years under my belt of using blended learning in the classroom. So it helped to make a little bit more of a seamless transition to the fully, to the pandemic and our fully virtual learning. So this has definitely been a challenging year, and today is my 2nd day of summer. So I am so excited that we all survived, but I know that it really was a great year because of all the strategies that I was able to learn. So formative assessments, we have formative and summative assessments. Formative assessments are key to helping us measure our students' understanding. And there's so many different forms of data that help us see our student and get to know them academically. So it's going to help give us multiple perspectives and opportunities for our students to have success. And by the time we get to our summative assessment, like that assessment that we wrap up at the end, the test score shouldn't be a surprise. We should have a really good picture of who our students are and what their learning is. So we're going to just kind of cover a couple of these different areas of different assessment possibilities leading up to that summative assessment, and different strategies that you could hopefully use and take away with you. So we did a lot of different things this year using technology in much deeper ways than I ever had before. And something that was always so important and was the foundation to our day was these social emotional check-ins. So I'm sure you've heard them a lot. In some ways that we did them in our online platform was the thumbs up or down, or holding up our fingers, or using emojis of the stoplight colors, measuring students' reactions. You know, how am I doing? Am I going too fast? Are you understanding? But we want to still continue, even though I know that I'm not going to be starting my year off in a virtual platform this next year. I'm going to have students in front of me. I still want to make sure I check in with their social emotional health and see if they're ready for learning. And one way we can do that is creating just a simple, quick Google form. So this is just a screenshot of 2 that I've created. The one on the right is the one that we use most often. It was our midweek check-in. So students would just really quickly, it would take them a quick minute, just check off how they're feeling in all the different subject areas. Do you need to have a meeting or a conference with me? And is there anything that you want me to know? And it was a good opportunity for students, sometimes if I didn't hear their voice a lot, to make sure I just heard from them weekly as a quick check-in. And it was really wonderful data to be able to sort that Google spreadsheet that it created to kind of see how the students were doing over the course of a semester or the full year.
Hey, Christy, real quick, we had a request to go into presentation mode.
Oh, well, so I can do that, but I'm gonna have to exit it a couple of times because there's stuff on the sides of the slide.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's totally fine.
But I can.
Don't do that. Don't do
Okay.
that.
Yeah, sorry. So I put a link here for you. This is a social emotional templates from Pear Deck. So if you use or are familiar with Pear Deck, it measures the students like when they go in, as soon as they sign in, like, how are you doing today? And it used to give me like a quick smiley face or an unhappy face to see how students were. And it was a good springboard for conversation. But they have these templates in a PowerPoint and in Google Slides. So if you click on that link, you could customize these and use these in your classroom next year. So dipsticks are really important, or temperature checks, we call them. So just kind of quick spot checks. So seeing how students are doing. So we can use the question feature in Google Classroom just to pose a quick question to kick off the lesson or to wrap up the lesson. And there's a feature in Google Classroom where you can allow the students to interact with each other. So they can talk back and forth to each other, or you could turn it off so the interaction is just between you and the student, depending on what the question is and your intention. But it's a good way to get the conversation rolling in your classroom. And Padlet works well also for collecting quick responses and lots of different media like pictures and videos and things. So here's just a quick screenshot of a question that was posted in Google Classroom. And you can see a student response. And it's nice for me to be able to see that everybody's participating and be able to respond to them in that format, which is a little bit quicker than, writing notes on paper. And then this is a screenshot also of a Padlet. So this was just kicking off a poetry lesson. We asked some leading questions that are on the top of each of the columns, and then the students just responded below each one. And again, just a quick way for the students to get interacting with each other and to measure how they're doing. I also like to create goals. So to kick off the beginning of each quarter or even throughout the quarter, we use this format called Whoop. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but I put a video here for you that you can look it over. And this links here, this guide will link you to how to create a Whoop. But it's just a little bit more intricate than just creating a goal. So let's say like they want to, a lot of times kids say, I want to know my times tables better. They, okay, well, that's your wish. What would be the outcome if you were to be able to do that? And what's the obstacle? What's the thing that's going to stand in your way? Because I might want to lose 5 pounds, but I can't just do that, right? My obstacle might be Doritos. And so what's my plan? So if I want to make sure that I'm not going to pick up those Doritos, like how I'm going to make sure that they're like locked away in a cabinet, so maybe their obstacle is YouTube, right? And what's their plan is that they're going to set aside, they're going to put a timer on for 10 minutes. So they kind of just create, a measurable goal. And then the idea is that you check in with them. So I normally collect these in a Google form, and then I have students also write them somewhere visible, or I create labels for them so they can see them, so they can check back and continue to work on and measure their goals. So another quick temperature check or check in with the students is a simple slide like this. And throughout this whole slide deck, you can use any of these slides that you want by just copying and putting them into a slide deck of your own. But this is just a simple template. I have 28 students, so normally what I do is I'll set this up with their names ahead of time, but since I didn't know your names, I couldn't do that. But I just ask them a simple question, like what's one thing you learned today? Or what was the most impactful thing? Or what question do you still have? And then I'll have maybe 4 of these slides, and I watch as all the students type. And then if I notice that somebody is not typing, then I know that they might be distracted or not currently like paying attention to the lesson. So it allows me to go have a conversation with them, and it's a good record of how they're doing at the end of lessons or throughout. All right, so the next category is jot thoughts. We use these a lot, especially in language arts with our reading to show comprehension and express their thinking. So some students can process and respond right away, and others really take time to, sort it out, and that's kind of how I am. So jot thoughts are really good for when we're doing like an interactive read aloud, where students, you're going to ask questions. You would ahead of time go through the book, and you'd just jot down different places where you're going to stop and ask questions or ask students to jot. And then you can give them ahead of time this like kind of sort of looking for like a template of how, like what a 1-star would be versus a 4-star, like a rubric. That's the word I was looking for. So you can go over with students what you would expect to see in their jots. So there's too many people to be able to do this in the presentation, but I'm gonna still ask you questions, and you can just maybe think about what the answers are going to be, but you're not gonna actually write them somewhere. But I will show you, if you had a smaller group in your classroom, how you would do this with your students. I have all those slides that you can use. So I'm gonna play this short video, and I'm gonna stop it at about 30 seconds in. And the question I'm gonna ask you is, what can you tell about the boy, and what makes you think that? Oops. Super.
That's about right.
Yeah. Let me really quickly, the name of it is The Present. Let me see if I can get it real quick. I would totally never do this in the classroom, but I think this is it. Okay.
Hey, sweetie. Sorry, I got home so late. I had to do something after work. It's such a beautiful day.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. Hopefully when it went full screen, you could still see it. But what can you tell about the boy so far? Like, what are you thinking about the boy? And you can type it in the chat, or I'll just give you a second to think about it. And what you would do in your class, I'll show you, is I have this template for you that you can use, and I would have several of these slides, and all the students would pick a sticky note, and this is where they would be actively responding to the question that I asked them. And then that would, again, give me really good information to be able to tell if the student is understanding the main idea or the main point of the video. So I see that you guys are saying in the chat that he's very into his video games, right? He's seen, some people have said that he's very engaged. He might be very distracted. He's ignoring his mom because he just wants to play video games. All right, so the next question I'm going to ask you, we're going to watch a little bit more. And then, so were you surprised by the boy's reaction? So we're going to watch about another minute, and you're going to explain your thinking.
Why didn't you stop playing and open the present I got for you? Hello? Oh, yes, sir. I don't know why you didn't get the papers. I put them on your-
Okay. Whoa, cool. Hmm? She's gotta be kidding me. Awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. So the question was, are you surprised by the boy's reaction? Explain your thinking. And I'll show you a sample again. This is, you can see this is the new question. I would have multiple of this slide and the students would respond to the answer to this. So yeah, he was really mean to the puppy. People said that they were surprised by this reaction. It doesn't seem normal. Maybe he's really upset by something. Maybe there's something going on. His expectations were not met, so he responded accordingly. All right, so then the last question I'm going to play. So normally you would give more time for your students, right, to think and engage. And this is a really good time to build relationships too, because you could say to people like, oh, I really love what Jared said, or that's a really great idea. And oh, I could see that so-and-so has a connection with you. So it sparks a really good conversation. So the last question I'm going to ask you, we're going to watch to the end of it, so it's just a little bit longer. How does the boy's feelings change? And what is your opinion about why they changed?
Mom, we'll be outside.
Okay, so what was your reaction about how did the boys' feelings change, and why do you think, what was your opinion about why they changed? So this is the template that you're welcome to use, but it's a good conversation about body language. It's understanding perspective, right? So that's, if your students can make that connection, then you're gathering really good information and data. And then what you could have them do after you do engage them in an activity like that is you could have them do what's called a write long. So I would ask my students to take one of their sticky notes, so any one from the three that they really think that they can write more about, and they're going to expand on it. So this is just a sample answer that I gave, where I took one of my answers, I expanded on it, and I also drew a picture to help accompany my words. And this is the slide that I would have students turn in independently in Google Classroom that would help me measure if they understand the main idea of what we just read, or the read aloud, or the video, or whatever you chose to do this with. This is another example. You can use this slide as a template as well. So I have my students in book clubs, and I would have them read for the week, and then I would have them take their sticky notes, normally put it in the book, but I had them start to put their sticky notes in a slide deck, because then we would have the slide deck for a conversation. And the students would then once a week take one of their sticky notes that they had gathered, and they would do a write long. So this is an example of one student's sticky note. And normally off to, I think I have it on this slide, I do, off to the side of the slide, this is why I didn't put it in present mode, is some of the slides have these little goodies. So the students can take these and they can duplicate them, so they could say, they could identify that this was a really happy post, or this was something that was really silly, or this is a moment in the book that made me really mad. So you can see this is a screenshot of a student's that he did, and he referenced the book, and he told me like what page it was on, what he was thinking. So we really worked along to develop his to develop his jots to show reflection. Okay, so the next one, also there's stuff on the side of this slide as well. So the students use these, and I normally indicate for them and tell them what they're used for. So the thumbs up could be like a me too, like a connection, the hearts for a new idea, or the I'm wondering. So the students, I had them, this was a math lesson. I had them take a look at some data in a chart, and then I just said, you know, what do you notice and what do you wonder? So we didn't start the learning yet. We didn't learn anything about, we were looking at a histogram. We didn't learn anything about it. We just said, what do you notice? What do you wonder? So the students jotted down different bits of information, and then they would drag these icons on to say that they had a connection, or yeah, they were thinking that, or I hadn't seen that before. And it really helps validate the students when they're typing and they see that somebody's connecting to their thinking. It's a really like instant way where you don't have to have those interruptions in class, because they can do this quietly. So another format is See, Think, Wonder. So for this strategy, you would have them, it just activates their thinking, and it allows them to think about their thinking, their metacognition. So this is just one example of a See, Think, Wonder. So we're learning about the Civil War. So here's a map. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? And the kids could have a conversation in class, or I have templates below. You can set up a slide for them to interact and respond to the slides. This is another one as well, looking at artwork, same thing. What do you see in the painting? What do you think? And what are you wondering? And they respond here, and it sparks a conversation. So this template is one that you can use for any of those activities. Another one is a 3-2-1. So this is just very basic. You watch a video, you can read something, you have them reflect on a lesson, and really anything that you want. So I gave them a book to read. So this is just a screenshot from the book. I just had them read like a page or two. And then on the next one, we use this template. And it just said, what are 3 things that I learned from reading, 2 things that I'm wondering about, and 1 example. And off to the side of the deck, I had this set up independently. It's not linked right now because I couldn't share this resource with you, but this image was hyperlinked to the book so they can get there directly. And I always put all of the things that they need off the slide. So anything like that's a special character or something that would make it easy for them to respond, everything would be located in the slide deck. And here's just another example of a way to use it in math. So what is a square? 3 things that I know a square always is, 2 reasons I know this is true, and 1 example of a square that I can find in my classroom or around my home. And then some other things that you can do for have your students jot, just some more templates. And these are again off to the sides of the slide deck or sticky notes. So they can type in the sticky note and drag them and drop them onto the slide. Really anything that you're reading to show their understanding. Same thing here with the concept map. They have some goodies on the side that they can drag and drop on. And here's one more graphic organizer. The FRAIR model is something that is very common we do in school. What is an example and a non-example? What's the definition? And what are some facts or characteristics about the thing that you're having them put in the FRAIR model? So it's just a couple of different ways for them to start to jot their thoughts and collect that for your evaluation. So the next area is encapsulation. So this is where students are really just starting to share their thinking in diverse ways. So one way that you can do this that is the students love doing is creating mind maps. They could do this on paper and pencil, but there's so many tools online and different like picture software that they have where they can create these really cool mind maps, and they can hyperlink things and draw and make connections to the different activities. And this links out to an article that gives you some ideas about how to do mind mapping if you wanted to look more into it. And similar to mind mapping is one-pagers. It's a little bit more loose, right? It doesn't have like all that webbing. It's just encapsulating, again, all of their ideas of everything that they learned about a topic. And they can do this with creating digital artwork They can hyperlink things, they can insert videos. I know this one is a non-tech example. Some of my students prefer to do stuff on paper pencil. They would take a picture and then put it into a slide deck so we can all see each other's work, and they could see everything and do like a gallery walk of everything. And this also links out as well to another article that you are welcome to explore. They give you some ideas of how to do one-pagers. So another great way to encapsulate is have them pretend like they're on Twitter. So you can have them stick to the traditional 140 characters, or I think now it's expanded to 280. And they could use hashtags to kind of share their thoughts in a creative way. So this is a template that you're welcome to use. You can just delete mine, but it could just be like my week in tweets. So each of these cover a different subject and a different subject from the week. So I think there was math, there was a social studies thing in there where they're just kind of wrapping up and showing their understanding of what they learned. There's a ton of different ideas, so hopefully I'm not going too quickly. Another one is cell phones. So using, the kids love, right, cell phones. So there's a lot of different creative ways that you can use them. So one fun way to use it in history or in social studies is cell phones from the past. So you pretend like George Washington had a cell phone. Who was he calling? And you give the kids a template and a slide deck, and I'll show you on the next slide. And they could have a text conversation between two different people. You could show what does George Washington's camera roll look like, or what's an email that he recently wrote, or what is design an app that he would use because he's a surveyor. So maybe he'd have an app on surveying and being the leader of a country. So you could, I think I covered all of them. Yeah, I did. Oh, yep, I covered them all. So this is just an example of student work. So they had to read, these books were hyperlinked. They had to read one of these books. And then after they read it, they had to kind of encapsulate what's the most important thing. And they had to design an app. So this is just a cell phone template, like a picture of a cell phone, and then the kids just added images, or they create small little apps, or I put in a speech bubble, and they create conversations back and forth. Another super fun one that I love to do is the top 10 list. So it's top 10 list of things I'd never say. So I start this in a fun way. I am not an outdoorsy person, so normally I'll tell them like, I'd love to go camping, or I can't wait to go ski down a mountain, like things that I would never do. So we do it in a fun way, and then we start to use it kind of around, pretend like you are a quadrilateral. You know, what are 10 things a quad would never say? Or again, you are George Washington, or you are, you know, any of the science context. So just 10 things that so-and-so would not say or would say. And the kids have fun doing that. It's a good critical creative thinking strategy. Similar to that too is like the elevator pitch. So they've got 60 seconds to tell me really quickly, like, what is the main idea? What is introduce a person? What is some background information? What are their goals? What is it they hope to accomplish? And they could just simply record this in a Flipgrid where they're recording their voice. They could dress up, they can create a video, they could do it in writing. There's lots of fun ways to share that. And another one, almost done with this, is the vanity plates. So students can take like a license plate from a car, and they could create a vanity plate encapsulating their ideas. So on the next slide, there's a template. They can brainstorm. So some key ideas off to the left are some directions for them. So sum up the main ideas of the lesson onto the vanity plate. Do not exceed 8 characters. Be creative and think. Oops. Welcome to my classroom. Always have mistakes. Think outside of the box. Then explain how you came up with your vanity plate and how it connects with our learning. So I always provide for the students, like on the slide, like I said, anything that they need. So they'll brainstorm all their different ideas here on the left. They're going to tell me, this is why I decided to pick, and then this was, I gave them the template as a license plate, and they came up with time for equal, because we were talking about the civil rights movement, and that not everybody was equal at that time. So this is also a fun way for them to kind of wrap up the main idea of a lesson. So other things that you can do for diverse understanding, we talked about like wonderings. It could be just understanding different perspectives or viewpoints, doing that with the cell phone, making connections. That was the mind map. So there's a couple of different ways that may not have been covered. All right. So number 5 is entrance and exit tickets. So I use these all the time to help measure when students start a lesson. I'll just ask them a reflective question from the day before, or do some kind of review problem just to see, get a pulse of the classroom. or do it at the very end to help measure if they took away and understood the main part of the lesson. So some ways that you can do that is through a Flipgrid. So I'm going to show you one of them. These are just two different examples. This is a student who was showing his understanding of some math vocabulary.
Where's the quadrilaterals? Got them right here. Quadrilateral. Joking, right? I got your quadrilaterals, dude. These are not quadrilaterals. These are triangles. Aren't they the same thing? No, this is a triangle. This is a quadrilateral. Okay, I got your quadrilateral. This is a quadrilateral. Look, this is the one you gave me. This is the one I brought. They're the same thing. Oops. Listen, quadrilateral is a shape with 4 sides and it's closed. It also has 4 angles. Jeez. Okay, fine. I got scissors. Let me give you your quadrilateral. Look, 4 sides, 4 angles, and it's closed. Happy? And then he says it does have 4 sides and 4 angles and it's closed. It also counts as quadrilateral. That all quadrilaterals are rectangles or squares. Gee, that guy did not know anything about shapes. He took my wallet.
So super fun way, right, to share his understanding. And I could tell from that he understands what a polygon is because he talked about it being a closed shape. I know that he knows what a quadrilateral is because he talks about the 4 sides and 4 angles. He understands that not all quads are the same because not all of them are squares or rectangles. There's other types. So, and he did it in such a fun and engaging way that all of the other kids in the class were excited, and he really got to share his voice and shine.
So the other thing about that is he used Flipgrid, right? There's no video editing. It's just a play. There's just a pause and record button. So he was really creative on how he used the pause button, right?
And he was the first kid I ever saw use it like that. Here I am with Flipgrid, and I just hit record, and I recorded the whole way through and hit stop, and he made it into like a movie, and it was really cool. It opened the door for other students. But so this is just another screenshot of Bookgrid. So the book clubs I talked about before, I create a Flipgrid for that, so the students can share their voice and talk about the things that they find shocking or questions that they have, and it really sparks a conversation. But the reason why I share this is you can see in the bottom right here that I was in the Flipgrid, so I participate in the conversation with them, and the students really appreciate that. And that's the same. This video is just me at the grocery store showing them an example of unit rate. All right, guys, I'm at Wegmans, and I found this cereal, Frosted Mini Wheats. It's $2.50, and it's for 18 ounces. So the unit rate, if I take 250 and I divide it by 18, it comes out to around 14 cents. But then there's this one, and it's $3.29, and there's 36 ounces. So if I were to calculate that, and then a little bit later, I take them to the deli and show them unit rate there. So I found some more unit rate, guys. Isn't that cool? If you go to the deli, you can see how much everything costs per. So they like seeing that because they realize that I'm a real human being, right? They saw my husband, they saw my grocery cart, they saw that I didn't have makeup on and I recorded a video and I made mistakes and it's okay. So participating in the conversation with them is really fun. So another thing that you can do, so I think we're still on entrance and exit tickets. So I use Google Slides a lot this year, and I plan on 100% using them continuing into next year. So I created a ton of sorts, and it's such a time saver. Kids used to always cut paper, and I feel like the lesson was how to cut and not lose the pieces of paper that you cut out. Because like, Miss M, I can't find number 8 or letter H. And I'm like, so I had to go photocopy another one. Never doing that again. So we're gonna have digital sorts now. So I just took screenshots of it was a worksheet, and I just put a thick, I show you how to do it here. So you just go to file. Oh no, sorry, just kidding. That was customizing the sides of the slide. I just click on it, and then I come up here to the pencil, and I just change pick a color, and I make the line really thick. So I make it 8 points. And then I do different colors because then it's really easy to grade because it's very colorful and visual, which I couldn't do that on paper before. And the sorts, the bell would ring or time would be up and all the kids were collecting their stuff, or I'd say like, okay, hold on, let me take a quick picture. So now everything would be saved in a slide deck. So I'm never going back to paper and pencil sorts ever again. So here's just a couple of examples of ways that I used it. So this was a science lesson. Off to the left, it says, watch this video. So the video is linked for students to watch a YouTube video. And after they did, they had to identify the different types of energy. So if it was chemical energy or radiant energy, they just drag and drop these on. And it was also really easy for me to grade because I would say, like, let's say that this one was wrong. I would just come up here and I would make the border really thick. And I picked a color like red. And so the students would know when they came back to it, the ones that were outlined in red were the ones that were wrong. And, or I would put a screenshot, and I show you that later, of the answer key right on the slide deck, which was also really cool and easy to be able to give them the answers to do some self-checking. So they just manipulate all these pictures. I'm gonna undo all of those. So this is a math sort. So the students had, we were talking about slope, and the kids had to basically go from a table and they had to figure out what it would look like on a graph. So if they look at this very first one, they had 2 slides that followed with also 6 graphs, and they had to figure out which line matched which one. So let's say this first one here, I'm looking at the orange. Let's say this first one also happened to be orange. So I would just drag and drop the circle to say that those 2 are matching. And again, super easy to grade because I made everything a different color. So it was really visual and easy for me to go through and tell which one was right or wrong. This was another same type of thing. So they had the table and they had to tell me the rule. So down here, I had all the slides, all the cards ready for them. So they would just drag up and they would delete any of the ones that they didn't use. And I had them on all the different slides, or they could just move them off the slide. But then I could also, again, really quick and easy, you can see them really small without having to actually click on the slide to see if the colors are correct. I'm going to undo all of that just in case. All right, so another thing, just the one thing I learned today, so have students in a slide like I showed you above, they could have a question posted in Google Classroom, a pair deck, there's lots of different ways to do it. Also a Google form, I love these because they were graded instantly, I never had to touch anything. I used to always have to collect papers and manually grade everything, but now using a Google form, as soon as all the kids turned it in, I just released the scores and then I could get a report right away to know, okay, these are the 5 kids that I need to meet with at the end of the day. So creating the Google form takes a little bit of time, but I can use them over and over again. 2 truths, 1 lie is another fun format to do for an exit ticket. So it's just 2 are true, 1 is false. So you can do this with anything. You can use this template. You would just change these cards. All of this stuff would just delete, but use all these down here. So the kids just basically drag and drop. So the median of the data is between 8 and 11 cups of coffee. So they can drag and say, yep, that's true. And this one's true. And this is the one that's not true. I don't know because I don't remember. But then the kids would come here and then they would type their answer saying, this is why the one in the X box is not true. So it's a really quick and easy way to measure their understanding.
So again, the colors really help you to check, right? When
Yeah.
you're done, because this in Google Slides isn't going to self-grade, but the colors are really helpful.
Super helpful. And if they did it on paper, it definitely took me longer. It was very quick and easy. And I show some tips if we hopefully have time at the end to show you how I made it really easy for me to do some grading. So here's another exit ticket idea. So this was just reading a passage about Harriet Tubman. So the students kind of read and digested this. And then on the next slide, this is what they turned in. The students just had to answer these questions. What I always did is if I gave them a slide deck that was, let's say, 5 slides long, and I really wasn't interested in slides 1, 2, 4, and 5, I only wanted slide 3. I always had them take their slide I was going to grade and drag it up to the first position. And then when I clicked on their slide deck, I just automatically saw the slide that I was interested in seeing. So I started that from week 1 and the students were like on top of it. So they knew, I said, hey guys, this even saves me even a couple of seconds, and it made it much easier for me to grade. Here's another template that you're welcome to use as well. So I used to think, but now I think. So after they learned a lesson, you can give them something to reflect on. So think about what you knew about American slavery and ways enslaved people resisted before today's lesson, and put your thoughts in the box on the left. Then add some thoughts of your new knowledge that you learned from today's lesson in the box on the right. So it's showing their growth for learning. You can make this again. I would make a slide deck where I would just have 28 of the same exact slide. Everybody in my class is assigned a number. So if Jared's slide number 5 in class, he would go to slide 5, and that's the one he would write on. Or you can have them turn it in individual if you don't want them to see each other's. Again, I always kind of think about what I want to get out of it and deciding how I'm going to set it up. So the next one, I'm going to delete that, is synthesizing. So this is where students start to create. So once we've really got into a lesson and they're really understanding a standard, then we start to think about ways that they can really display that and create and have fun with it. So students create maybe different posters or instructional videos, anything that would highlight their learning. So here's an example. This is a trifold. So I gave the students a template, and we had just learned about tax, tip, and discount. And I said, this is something a lot of people struggle with. They don't know how much tip to leave, or what if something's 20% off, they don't know to take 10 and then double it. So I want you to create a trifold, and they made their trifold. They actually recorded it, and there's a QR code that somebody could scan, and it would take them to their video, and it would be them describing to the user how to do tax, tip, and discount. So
I love that because especially with tipping, that's a very American thing, you know. And so when we have a lot of international folks here, and so even them visiting a tip calculator could be helpful.
Yeah, and it gave them that purpose for doing the assignment, because they knew that it was going to be something usable. So they collaborated together and created this really cool thing. So this next example, this student finished reading a book, and she wanted to share what the book was about. And I just said, you could do the typical book report where you're just going to hold a piece of paper. You can do something, you can make a poster, you could create anything you want. So she is an actress, and so she decided to create a video. I'm just going to show you a clip of it. Oh, so she basically, the book is this book Echo, if anybody's ever read it, and it takes you through 3 different stories. So she chose different characters throughout the story, and she used her mom in the video. Her mom is the therapist asking the character questions, and the character is responding to the questions. Let me try that.
So how did you feel when Elizabeth joined the Hitler Youth Program?
Doesn't let me fast forward.
My
anymore.
father and I were very heartbroken. We had lost the Elizabeth that we had known for such a long time. We were so excited when we heard she was coming home. Then Hitler took her away from us.
I see. So how could you stand it when you got teased and people looked at you strangely because of your birthmark?
Well, I knew there was nothing I could do about it. But sometimes I wish that I could maybe hide it a little bit. But everyone looks at me strangely once in a while. And once a group of boys even said for a famous and fancy musician did not only sound like a harmonica, but a whole orchestra. I think that did impress the judge.
So you can just see she changes
characters. I think most people would have said
she even changes accents. I could never do that. She had her mom involved. She did editing. She used props. She recorded at home, something she couldn't have done in the classroom. So it was just a cool way for her to use technology to her advantage to show her, to highlight her book to the class. So this student, it was an poetry activity. So that she had to create a poem and then highlight her poem in any way that she wanted. So she typed it up and she made it beautiful with her stanzas, but then she used crafts around the classroom and at home to create this gorgeous tree. And it was a poem about herself. So she has all these things about herself hanging from the tree. And you can see she braided the roots, and in the roots she put her family, because her family is, part of who she is. This student did the research, the Bermuda Triangle. Is it fact or fantasy? And she created all of these images. So I think I'm going to open it and to show you. She drew them all and she put it together, and she was so proud of her work. It was amazing. So she drew all these images. So if people have been going into the Bermuda Triangle for a very long time, could it be aliens, paranormal activity, or is there a logical explanation? And she pretends to be this reporter throughout, kind of taking notes and telling a story. I'll go through it kind of quickly just so you can just see all of, this is one slide, all of her animations and work that she put into it. And she tells the story about different disappearances. I know it's too fast to read, but just so you can see. This one is similar. So she was actually inspired by this one. The student did a similar research project on global warming. And then he also created all of his own pictures and animations. So she saw this one, and I'm pretty sure this is where she got her idea to create her own images as well. So again, I won't go through all of it, but just so you can get a quick look. And this last example is a student who wrote a ballad. So this is one of the poems that we needed to cover this year. And we show them what a ballad is. So I'm like, who's ever going to write a ballad? You don't have to write one. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. She's like, yeah, I want to. Not only did she write it, but she also sang it.
From when you're born to when your bones are gone, memories will be inside of you. From the first day of second grade to the last day of mowing the lawn, what sticks to you like super glue? It's you.
These kids blow me away with the things that they do. It was incredible. So the next section is so creating tasks for the students to do. I'm going to walk you through one. We don't have time to do it, but you can use this template if you would like in your classroom. And there is also a link to other tasks that you could do as well. So this is, oh no, sorry, that's the next. No, I jumped ahead a little bit. This is a different task that I did. I gave the students this slide. I had them watch a video. So this video kind of goes over, introduces everything that they would need to do. So they don't need to hear me say it. They can watch their video at their own time or rewatch it if they missed part of the directions. And then they had to follow through. And this is, again, we were doing discovery of slope. So everywhere where they saw a question mark, they were required to go in and put an answer. And I gave them hints throughout. Same thing here. I wanted students to graph. This is an example of providing them with everything that they need. I created just a circle and I gave them the lines so they could plot their points, and then they could put the line on it so it would be easy for them and they didn't have to spend all this time creating. So this is the one I was talking about. This is called a 3-act task, and it is hyperlinked. So it'll take you to different tasks that you can use in your classroom. This one is for volume. So we start by watching a tiny little video. So you see like this tiny sugar cube is going to go into this box, understanding the box is 3-dimensional. So that gets them thinking now for the task. They start thinking, okay, well, what did you notice and what do you wonder? So this is a template like I showed you above that you're welcome to use. And it also has those icons on the side so the kids could drag them on. If I have 20, I think this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. So if you have 24 students, you're going to create 3 of these slides or 4 of these slides. So the students just take one entire row for their notice and their wonder. And then you ask them the main question, okay, well, how many sugar cubes are in the box? So the next thing I want to ask my kids is for the 3-act task is what is a really high reasonable estimate and what is a low reasonable estimate? And this slide, you can change this image out to support that website because there's lots of different things to do. And you can have the kids come claim a box and they would just type here, what is our estimate of too low? So they might say like reasonably like 25, and something reasonably too high might be 100. And then in blue is where they're going to type what is your actual estimate. And they can put their name in the box or they can just type it. So then you're going to show them Act 2. So this gets them thinking a little bit more. And the main question is how many sugar cubes are in the box? That's it. So then this is where you would put the students in breakout groups. So you plan this ahead of time, you put all their names in there, or you can just randomize your groups, or I guess we'd be back in the classroom, so I can't randomize it. I would plan it ahead of time. And you give them workspace. So I just put a note here, if you have 5 groups, you're going to create 5 duplicate slides. I just changed this box color so it's colorful. But then the kids will use this workspace. And the next slide is an example of one of my groups and what they did. So they took a screenshot from the video I just showed you, and then they were able, thought this was genius. They took a rectangle and they said that the top of this box is 6, because they could see from this picture there are 6 sugar cubes across the top of the box. So they just duplicated this little rectangle and they turned it, and they saw, well, this is also 6. So they estimated that there's only room for 5 more. So they knew that the height of the box was 11. So they used the formula for area, 11 times 6 times 3, and they got a guess of 198 units cubed. So what you would do is then you would show them Act 3 is revealing. So I would delete this box, showing them everything, and then they're able to kind of self-check with what they did together as a group. And then this last slide is, if you had all of those slides, you can have the kids take a gallery walk. So you could have them go to, you know, group 2 slide, and you say, I noticed that, and they can type here and just fill in all the things that they noticed. So on slide 8, I noticed that, or I made a connection to, just a template to provide and help academic discourse. So the second to last section is the smallest one, just because I still do multiple choice, because we do need to do some state assessments at the end of the year. And I don't want students to see multiple choice for the first time when they're taking standardized assessments. So we do use it throughout the year, but it's not the main thing that we're doing. Oh, that one. So for virtual assessments, we have, every school district has something different, but we have a Blackboard. And so it has like some question, it has like a question bank that we can choose from, and it allows the students to take it and we get the responses right away. But I use Google Forms a lot as well. And you basically, all that information that you get from that is going to help you be able to create your small groups. Where are you going to go when you have all that data that you've collected? What are you going to do for remediation, or who still needs help, and how can you create your groups? And I always tell my students that we're going to focus on a growth mindset, that it's okay if you make mistakes. It's about how we correct them and how we learn and grow from them. So one thing that I do is when I do multiple choice tests, this is a slide that you're welcome to use as well. I just have them do corrections. So first I have them reflect on their tests. What did I do well? And what do I think I want to work on for the next time? And then they have this template repeated several times. So in this box up here is where they're going to put the question that they got wrong. This is where they're going to put their new correct answer, A, B, C, or D. And in this big space is where they're going to show their work of their new answer. So here's a screenshot of 2 different ones. You could see a student like wrote stuff on paper and took a picture and put it on the slide, versus this student took a screenshot and then just typed all their answers here. And this is where I allow them to improve their grade. And it's so important about, you know, having mastery. It's not that maybe you got, I don't know, a 75%, but let's fix the things that we got so you can show understanding, so I can give them opportunities to raise their score. So this last section, the last couple of minutes, it's just to basically some tips that I learned this year that I'm going to continue to use next year that were super helpful. So providing students with checklists so that they understand what you're asking of them. I don't use rubrics so much because I don't love them, but I do make sure that I give my students a list of requirements of the things that I'm looking for. And basically, as long as they do those things, then they're going to get a good grade. I think the rubrics for elementary school sometimes are a little bit too wordy, so I stick to more checklists. Giving the students feedback, I encourage you to give really detailed feedback as much as possible. You can use plugins. You can see here, Moat is a plugin where it records your voice, but I take advantage of the conversation I can have with students digitally, because I don't always have them in front of me. And sometimes it can be really hard to get time with them. So I try to have conversations and leave as much feedback as I can. Voice feedback, like I said. Moat, or here's another one, is I always say it wrong, but Buckaroo, I think. It's a free website. You can record your voice, give the kids a link, and they can listen to your comments. So this is what I was saying. I take a screenshot of a key, And then I have it on my desktop, and then I'll just show you, you can't see me dragging it in, but I just drag the screenshot right onto the slide and I resize it. And I tell in my comments, I'll tell the kids, look at the key on slide 2. So they can self-correct after I've looked at it. So, and I always make my keys really colorful, so it's really easy to see. The sticker that you saw me just put in, and I have it down here linked so you can download it if you would like to use it. It's just a little sticker that says take a closer look. So you can see here, this is the screenshot. They got question number 16 wrong. I just dragged the sticker from my desktop right onto the slide and I shrunk it down. So when the kids see this, they know they got question 16 wrong and they'll go ahead and do it again. So I have a couple of little stickers that I use a lot that I just keep on my desktop so I can reuse them. This was super helpful and I will continue to do this next year as well. There's so much digital work that we're doing. So I create a missing work slide deck. And all it is a screenshot of Google Classroom of the kids that didn't turn in an assignment. I said it's a judgment-free zone. It's okay. I'm here to help you. So I would hyperlink all of the screenshots so it would take them directly to the assignment. And then the kids could mark off with the little X. They could just drag it because it's like checking off a checklist, drag and drop it to say that they got it done. And I would just keep this, I would update it maybe every 2 weeks and it really worked. And I had students turning in 100% of their work. Definitely by the end of a week, if not 2 weeks. And then there was only normally like a couple of assignments missing. I would just meet with those kids one-on-one. I'm going to continue to keep my Google Classroom visual. So this links as well to you to Emojipedia. There's so many different places where you can get emojis, but these are some of my favorites that I use. The green check mark and the X just indicates yes, we're using it or no, we're not. The siren indicates this is where you need to focus. This is the work we're currently doing for this week. And I started using this 100 symbol and I would put it, as soon as all of the kids turned something in, I had 100% of the class had done it and I graded it. I just threw that little emoji on the front of it so the kids knew, oh, I don't need to check that assignment because we were clicking everywhere this year. So we're going to continue to use that next year. Here are some templates for you. I use digital stickers a lot. Like I showed you, just drag and drop them right on. So these are ones that I created, so they're free for you to use if you would like. And this is a tutorial that shows you how to create your own if you would like to explore that. Same thing here with these. These are just stickers that are a little more elevated. They're just gift stickers. So if you want to create them, there's links to show you how to do them as well. And there's templates that you can use to get started. You just have to put your gift and there's all the directions on there. Almost done, couple of slides left. So I would always collect data in a Google form. And then I linked my Google form. So I just show you on these next 2 slides how to do that. So all of my data kept coming to the same Google form. I didn't have, Google Sheet. I didn't have 73,000 Google Sheets. I had one. So I just show you in these steps how to do that. So that way you can collect all of your data in one sheet for all the different activities. And that's a good place to collect all the information. So I just show you how to color code it, how to change the names. And then this last slide here is for, it's a slide deck, a slide that I always put in their slide decks for them. The kids you can use this as well. You can just drag and drop. It's highlighter tape. So they could use the highlighter tape to highlight their thinking. They could use these little symbols here to mark up. You can see at the screenshot of like if they have a question or if something is new or interesting. And these are just different emojis. I will give them a couple to use so they can copy and paste them throughout. So whatever you do next year, I know there's a ton of ideas and information. Just remember to be flexible with our students. It's about mastery. It's about growing and learning and being able to correct their mistakes. And it's about a journey and providing them lots of opportunities to improve and show their understanding. So we're not going to do this, but this is just an example of what I would do at the end of a lesson. Everybody would take a little box and you would just say, what's one idea you would consider using with your students? So maybe you could just think about that and reflect on if there's one thing that you liked in this presentation that you might take and try to use next year. Maybe just file it away and remember it for when you kick off your year. So that's it. I made it with 2 minutes to spare.
You did. Now you can take a deep breath. That was amazing. That was amazing. So what's great about this presentation is the presentation itself that she created. And so you can go back and review those ideas. At the start, we said, if you just had one idea, I think we're all leaving with lots of ideas on what you can do. You should get the video emailed thanking you for attending, and then with a link to this video presentation. You can also access the presentation now. There are links that we've been putting into the chat. Again, if you're interested in the Learning Technologies in Schools program, the same program that Chrissy graduated from, the link is there, but you can also email me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have there. We're out of time. But Chrissy, do you have a few minutes to stick around if people have questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. But if you don't have questions, thank you for attending. And if you do, go ahead and put them in the chat. It looks like, Chrissy, we did have one from Donna.
All right, let me. This paragraph, right? Is that-
Yeah. Mhm. While she's reading that, I'll also say that, and I put this in the chat as well a couple times, we don't give like certificates, but you do receive a thank you email for attending the webinar. So that should be coming in the next week, and you will receive a recording of the presentation in that email as well.
So I was able to read it, and I'm sorry if this presentation has discouraged you, Donna. So whenever I have a student in my class, if I have a student who's hearing impaired, or vision impaired, I have a special ed teacher that I work with that helps support, adapt to all of these things. So what I have shared with you there are things that have not been adapted, and I can't truthfully answer your question about every single thing here that I've shared. But we do make modifications and accommodations for students that have vision impairment or hearing impairment. But I just don't have any of those examples. Like I said, I'm a 6th grade teacher, and I didn't have anybody in my class this previous year that I needed to make those accommodations for. So I apologize for not having those things for you.
I'll also say, being a classroom teacher myself in the past, and having students with those needs, I find teachers fairly responsive, and if a program doesn't, this is a good example of if a program does not work for all of your students in your classroom, don't use that program. There are other things that you can find. Programs are getting better and better at being more accessible to all students, but there's always accommodations you can make, and sometimes the accommodation is not to use the program.
And there's a variety of things that we use too. I think like it's okay to simmer that down to 1 or 2 good resources that use, because it's not about the technology per se, it's about how we're using it, right? And how we're designing our learning and designing the assessment. So I don't have to have a bag of tricks and 97 different programs. It's okay to really just use the things that work.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? I see lots of people are still hanging out. so again, please stick around if you have questions.
I see a question. How long is the Learning Technologies in Schools program? It's totally doable.
It's the master's degree is 30 credits, and you finish that in 5 semesters, including 1 summer semester. But each semester you take about 6. On average, about 6 credits a semester. The graduate certificate, which is about half of the master's degree, you can do in, again, 3 semesters. It's a bit lighter load. But even with the master's degree, we understand that all of our students in the program are teachers. And so we try to have as much overlap as possible with the program.
Totally interrupting you, but I loved it because every single assignment that we used, like that we did, it was completely, I turned around and was able to use it in my classroom the next day. It was unlike any online learning that I had ever done in my life before. And just, I learned so much stuff, and I just was like, hey guys, let's try this, let's try that, let's try this. And we were learning and growing and applying so much stuff to our classroom immediately. So everything was useful. I don't feel like we did anything that was like for fluff or that didn't have value.
Right. I mean, being a teacher myself and getting my master's while I was teaching, I always appreciated that. So we we do our best to make everything as applicable as possible. Someone asked about the PhD program. That takes longer. I'm not sure how many credits exactly, but that takes, it's part-time for the most part, although some students go through full-time, but it really depends on how many credits you take.
And this one is fully online. So which
Fully
I
online.
loved about it because I didn't have to physically go in, and it was very, I think there was maybe, and I don't know if it still is, but there was maybe one class that was synchronous just a couple of times.
Yeah, so in the different courses, we try to model the different ways to facilitate online learning. So for the most part, you have teams that you're working with, or discussions that you have, interactions with peers. But then in the end, you decide when during the week you do those activities and meet those deadlines.
I put the link, those are both things, but the link to learning technologies is the last link.
I think that's a really great question about out-of-state students. We do offer, Chanel, maybe you're the best to talk about that, but we do have out-of-state tuition discount for educators. I'm not sure how that works with international students or not.
So
I
we
know
do,
we have a lot of international group here.
yeah, we do have about a 40% tuition discount for out-of-state students off of the university rate. And that's automatic. If you are deemed an international student or an out-of-state student, it's automatically applied without having you to do anything extra. If you currently live and work in Virginia, you, as a VA educator, you could be eligible for a tuition discount. That requires a separate process once you're admitted to the program. We just have to verify your employment. But it's a 15% tuition discount if you're an educator that lives and works in Virginia.
The other thing that I'll say is there, as an instructor, there's a lot of costs that I have no control over. But as far as like purchasing textbooks or programs, we really use free programs. And I think you can get the whole master's degree only buying 2 or 3 books. One way that we do that is we write our own books and we offer them for free. So here is one example of a book that Chrissy's highlighted in as well. So yep, there you go. I love the sticky notes. We're writing a new book as well. Chrissy's also going to be highlighted with some videos in that one as well. But we try to keep the costs as low as possible with the costs that we can't control. And the only time you purchase a book is if we feel like it's much better than what we could create.